Those in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Those against? We have one against. Well, we're waiting for the vote to come in from the other room. Thank you. The motion is carried.
65 tail.
Do you wish to speak to it?
No, we've done away with that. Are we going to table this motion? All those in favor of tabling? All those against? Vote from the other room. I'm sorry, we have to wait for the vote from the other room. Deborah? What's in
the UN Charter? Well, the UN Charter basically provides that there are 5 conditions to be met before you can impose any limitation. There has to be a real state of emergency. The government has to be
65
capable
tail.
of proving that that state of emergency existed to a court of the land.
That may be the second
standard
65.
that they use is that the deviation from those rights set out in the Charter can only be to the extent that is strictly required by the exigencies of the situation. And some rights, including the right to not be discriminated on the basis of your race or sex, are protected in all situations and can never be deviated from.
Okay. Do we have the vote from the other room on tabling? The vote is nay to tabling. We now proceed to the vote on the motion, yes or no. All those in favor of the motion?
Are we not going to speak to it?
I thought that's what you did away with. All those against? We'll wait for the vote from the other room. Okay, in the interim, we'll take a question from microphone 1.
Yeah. If I may, the question of tabling, do you mean table till tonight, tomorrow, or the next conference, which can be 10 years from now? I think that's a bit relevant.
I think it's table, take to back to your constituencies, table to take back with you to wherever you come from to discuss with people, and perhaps get organized again in a conference at some future date. So it's a long-range table. I have had the vote from the other room. The motion has carried. Okay, we proceed to the next point. The word person should be used through the Charter in lieu of any other word denoting human being. We have call the question. All those in favor of tabling this, raise your hands. All those against? Okay. Oh, okay. Jesus Christ. I should have taken a refresher course in parliamentary. Okay. Could we have the vote from the other room, please, on tabling?
We don't have to vote on tabling every time.
Okay.
Because unless
And it's
something
complicated.
says
Okay.
table it.
I think what is being suggested is that we stop voting on tabling unless someone suggests it. So we'll do that from now on. Okay. Excuse me, we have the vote from the other room on tabling. Nay to tabling. Could we have a vote on the motion? I'll read it again. The word person should be used through the Charter in lieu of any other word denoting human being. All those in favor? All those against? Okay, we'll wait for the vote from the other room. Do you have a question?
I'm very glad the Assembly is considering the fact that to table is an amendment to a main motion. So I'm glad that we're getting to good parliamentary procedure.
Thank you. I'm sorry that my parliamentary procedure is not more polished. I have the vote from the other room at this point. The motion has carried.
May I ask information?
Okay.
May I ask information?
Yes.
We passed a motion whereby there would be 2 to speak for, 2 to speak against on each of these proposals. Why did we not do it on the one just presented?
Because we had a motion to call the question, and we did.
A
Okay?
motion to call?
We had the Assembly, someone in the Assembly called the question, and we took the vote. All right?
No, it doesn't satisfy me.
66
Okay.
tail.
Now, could I put to you proposal number 1? And
67 head.
just Mike 2.
Sorry, just to add 2 points of clarification. I've been told that it'll take the people an hour to an hour and a half to set up the other room, so we're still talking about a delay. Second, if the discussion goes on tonight, the translators have told us that they cannot be available, so that has to be taken into consideration.
Oh, okay. That this, I think it's a terrific idea to hurry up, but I also think it's really important that we make this decision as an assembly. And unfortunately, when we're all here, and we'll do it as an agreement among us. So could I put proposal number 1 to the assembly, please? All right. I'm going to. Then that is that we wait half an hour and we make a decision then. In other words, we push through and we see where we are in half an hour. That's proposal number 1. Could I see a show of hands on that? All in favor? Okay. That's working now through for the next half hour and assessing where we are then. Can I have results from the other room? We need it to be clearly in favor from the other room, by the way. It's very 50-50 on this one from this room. Definite nay. Okay. Proposal number 2. Which is that the bars are set up in the other 2 rooms. This room is kept as a working room, and we break for supper essentially right now. Okay? All those in favor? There's been a request to speak to the motion. No. Okay. All those, now I have to hear from the second, the person's withdrawn the request to speak. From the other room? It's in favor in this room, by the way. Four, clearly 4. All right. We have chosen for ourselves, as the rest of the day has gone, that we have just made another change, and we will break for dinner. When you come back after dinner, there will be bars in the other 2 rooms, and we will continue our working session. Okay, well, I'll take your guidance on that too. It takes an hour and a half to set up the bars. Shall we say we're back here at 7:30 or 8? 8? All those in favor of 8? It's not a majority. All those in favor of 7:30? Okay, that's the majority here. Can I hear from the other room on 7:30 or 8? Please don't leave. Just another 30 seconds and we'll have this sorted out and we'll all be on the same track.
To return the transistors.
Okay.
Now.
For which? For 7:30? 7:30. And please, all transistors must be returned or your identification cards, etc., you run into trouble with that. So please return your transistors.
That 68 shows upside down, but there's a head slate, I guess.
Women from out of province who are going to Stornoway. Buses are leaving here at 5:45 and 7:15. Buses will return here. We're hoping that you'll donate a return bus fare of $1. If you have any questions, please go to registration. Thanks very much.
I just want to ask you all to please come back tonight. We're going to have some very heavy discussion, and it will be possible for this to be carried by an interest group if you don't come back.
I think we all deserve a hand just for coming back. And we thought that we'd start this session with a joyful note. We have Linda Ryan Nye, who's going to sing a song for us.
This is what we call round two, huh? I'll do my best with this. It's a little awkward.
69 head.
But I happen to feel very strongly that many of the problems we face when we're forced to come together, and I mean forced, not by our own problems, in this kind of forum, and try in such short time to come out with the important things that we try to come out with, that in fact the responsibility for the problems does not lie with us, and we're doing what we can. So this one is in celebration of Farewell to Patriarchy. And I have two songs, and what's nice since it's a national conference is that this song is done to an Eastern tune. You know Farewell to Nova Scotia? Well, bear with me. Oh, farewell to patriarchy, that all-male caste. Let your armor rust and your weapons rot. For we'll no longer stay in our place out of your way. You better stick it in your Ripley and believe it or not. For we're coming round the mountain and we're coming round for power, and we're seeing ourselves as the president. And if you fight and you scream of injustice in our dream, we'll be forced to remind you who's the 51%. Nous venons vous faire face, vous décrire notre place. Reprenez vos plans construits entre hommes. Ouvrez vos yeux, nettoyez vos oreilles. Il est temps que notre voix fasse son chemin gamin. Il est temps que notre voix fasse son chemin gamin. So farewell to patriarchy, that all-male caste. Oh, don't let the changes get you overwrought. Oh, no, don't shed a tear. That's too female, my dear. Just stick it in your Ripley and believe it or not. Stick it in your Ripley and believe it or not. Truly a partisan audience. This one is the West Coast, and I haven't done anything to it. It is a beautiful song written by a woman who sings mostly out of Vancouver, as I understand, called Farron. And it is called Testimony. There's godlike and warlike and strong like only some are. There's mad like and sad like, oh, and had like we are. But by my life be I spirit, and by my heart be I woman.
by my hands be I whole. They say slowly will bring the least shock, but no matter how slowly I walk, there are spaces, empty traces, and doors of locks. But by my life be I spirit, and by my heart be I woman, and by my eyes be I open, and by my hands be I whole. You young ones, you are the next ones, and I hope you choose it well. Though you try hard, you may fall prey to the jaded jewel, but by your lives be you spirit, and by your hearts be you women, and by your eyes be you open, by your hands be you whole. Listen, there are waters hidden from us, but in the maze we find them still. We'll take you to them, you take your young ones, and may they take their own in turn. And by our lives be we spirit, and by our hearts be we women, and by our eyes be we open, by our hands be we whole. En français. Par nos vies, soyons esprits. Par nos cœurs, soyons femmes. Par nos yeux, soyons ouvertes. Par nos mains, soyons entiers. By our lives be we spirit, by our hearts be we women, by our eyes be we open, and by our hands be we whole.
Let's get the work done, and later on we'll sing Constitute.
We'll save an encore for later on.
70 tail.
Now that we got the East and the West connected together, we will get on to further work.
We are really put off about what's happened. And that hasn't been fully expressed, and I think that that is what I see as sort of the second level of reality, and I think that we're here tonight, and I really think we can handle all of it. So let's go to it.
Thank you for coming back. It's great. We were at Clause 7, and we had already passed 2 resolutions or recommendations with respect to Clause 7. One that it include the right to reproductive freedom, and the next one that it include the right to equality of economic opportunity. The next motion is, and I will read Clause 7 as it now exists in the government's proposal. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. The motion is that security of the person include the right to privacy. Okay? Deborah can explain what that means.
Actually, is there anybody here of the people who put that resolution forward? There was some concern that they were going to have to leave and not be here, so I assume that's what happened. Okay, I'll have to explain it. Essentially, what that motion attempts to do is to incorporate some of the law that has already gone ahead of us in the United States, where it was held that the right to privacy was incorporated in the right to security, and that also involved the right to make your own medical decisions about your body.
71 tail.
Does anybody else want to speak to that? Yes, mic number 3.
Did I understand you to say, to read the resolution as saying everyone? Then I think we should amend it to every person the way that we had voted previously?
Well, the clause as it stands says everyone, but we should be changed to every person. Yeah. Mic number 1.
I understand the resolution correctly. It deals with the right of a woman to control her own body, which would include the right to have pro-choice, the right to make your own decision as to an abortion. I was under the impression we had already covered that by passing the resolution on the right to reproductive freedom, because if we have, I don't see any need for us to repeat ourselves. But if I'm incorrect, please inform me, and I withdraw my objection.
I think that is substantially correct. We have covered the issue. However, the right to privacy goes a bit further. For instance, it would cover acts between consenting males, etc., homosexual relationships, and other concepts that we don't have in Canadian law. And that is why there is interest in having that concept promoted. But insofar as the question of the right to choice is concerned, we have covered that earlier today. I'm afraid that it's...
Okay, it's tabled. Next.
Okay, we're moving on to, oh, there seems to be a point there.
Mic number 2. Mic number 2.
Yes, it's working now. One thing you may want to consider on a point of equality, that privacy may tend to also lead that a husband may have the privacy to
beat his wife,
or to be abused, or to abuse his wife or family. Perhaps the wording in that, seeing as that it has been tabled, should be looked a little deeper.
Well, that it seems it has been expressed that's one of the reasons why it has been tabled, because privacy may lead to a number of interpretation. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to Clause 15.1. This is the equality rights. I will read you what is proposed now, as I understand it, in the Parliamentary Committee report. Every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to the equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and in particular, without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, or age. The proposed recommendation, this just disappeared, would be to change the prohibited grounds to add
3 different prohibited grounds are under discussion here. I think we're going to do them one at a time. The first one would be marital status. So be it resolved that the list of prohibited grounds of discrimination in Clause 15.1 be amended to include marital status.
Question? No more clarification on that? Mic number 1?
Doesn't that involve the question of the two tests?
Two-tiered.
And isn't there the argument that if you include some of the
73
grounds
tail.
where there is a reasonable distinction, perhaps, that weakens those which should never be violated?
Pardon me? Nobody called for tabling the motion. Yes,
We're just-
yes. Some people. You want a show of hands on how many want the question now? How many want the question now?
How many want the question now? Show of hands of how many
Opposed?
do not want the question now.
There's a majority for the question. Mic number 4.
One should include or try to include also no discrimination in occupation.
Well, we said there was no amendment, so I mean we can't deal with that.
You can. No, wow. Oh my gosh, it's so important because that's what I am here for as a homemaker.
Well,
You're
said
stupid because
we
you're doing
agreed.
that. Well, I know other jobs too.
We agreed. The audience agreed to the process that there would be no amendments. You would either reject or approve.
All right, let's approve. Let's cut them.
Okay. Call for the question. There was point of order. Number 2.
I'm not sure it's a point of order.
You're not sure? Well, try it.
You can reel me out if it isn't. But it
Number
seems
2.
to me, it seems to me that given what some people have said, that we shouldn't be voting on this en bloc. It seems what you're doing is saying we will take all 5 or 6 or whatever number of categories there were, and we'll vote en bloc that they should be compelling reason, whereas I think we should go through them one at a time and let us decide on some of those which some of us believe maybe shouldn't go in.
Well, it's a question of agreeing on the principle of the two-tiered.
Oh, at that level.
79 tail.
And
then will we vote on each one as to which one?
No.
Will we not vote on which ones go into the compelling reason one?
No,
Will
well,
we
not
vote
as
on
it
which
stands
ones
now.
will go into the almost never category?
Do you want it read again? Okay. Slowly. Which one go into the compelling?
Okay. Be it resolved.
Your question just set me off because I'm not sure you understand.
No, maybe I don't.
Something, okay? The compelling reason and almost never, I use those words interchangeably.
Right.
You do understand that?
I do understand, and what I think I understand is that we have voted so far to decide which ones are in the broad category of no discrimination. We are voting, as I understand what she said, we are now going to vote whether we will, within that broad category, define another category that is compelling reason. And I say if that's what we're doing, then having decided on two-tier, we should go individually through the categories you've mentioned to decide which one should go in the stiffer category.
Okay, let me propose something to you. Do you want to vote on the principle of the two tiers? Okay, let's vote on that. Everybody in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's now deal with the group that would require a compelling reason for any distinction.
Okay, so the first one would be on the basis of sex, that there be compelling reason on the basis of sex.
Everybody in favor? Let's hope. Opposed? Great. Then race. Oh, you have an objection? Number one.
I don't want to cause any extra problems, but it seems to me that we voted on to add 3 categories. That were not, you have an original motion which had listed which should go in the compelling and which presumably should be. I'm
No,
asking.
we had 2 different, those are 2 different resolutions altogether.
Oh, okay.
80
What
tail.
I'm concerned about is that we should, from the floor, have a chance to speak to the ones that have been added. About which category?
I'm sorry, that's already done. It's too
No,
late.
it isn't. No.
Unless you want to know in which tier it's
Yes,
going to be?
that's right.
Okay, well,
Okay,
that's
so
fine.
we can include those for questions?
Basically, what we're going to go is go through every one of the prohibited grounds of discrimination and decide which one should be a compelling reason
You
test.
aren't just going through the compelling ones?
No, we're going to do
Good.
them all, and we're going to vote on whether they should have a compelling reason test put to them. Okay? We've done sex, we agree, we're on to race. That there be a compelling reason for any distinction on the basis of race.
Everybody in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay? The next one is religion. That there be a compelling reason for any distinction on the basis of religion.
Opposed? Carried.
Next one is color. That there be a compelling reason for any distinction on the basis of color.
Opposed? Carried. Yeah.
That there be a compelling reason for any distinction on the basis of national or ethnic origin.
Opposed? Okay.
That there be a compelling reason for any distinction on the basis of marital status.
There was,
Okay,
sorry.
Well, these are the 3. These are the last 3. Oh, I guess.
No marital status is included in there.
Well, I thought that was the point, that we were going to add those 3 in.
81 tail.
No,
Marital status, sexual orientation, or political belief would be added in. Actually, we should do mental or physical.
well, what about the family law? Just a minute. Deborah, are those 3 supposed to be included in the one that need a compelling reason?
There shouldn't be, but
They
people
shouldn't
want
be.
to vote on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, but they want to vote.
Yeah.
And there should be.
Okay, let's take the marital status, and before we vote, we'll entertain interventions, okay? Number 1.
I'd like to speak to the marital status one. I think it's very important that we not include it in the most compelling category, because if we do, then some smart lawyer is going to get up there and he's going to say, hey, ladies, you're not going to have the protection of the Family Law Reform Act because you're married and you're not going to get that community property protection. And some woman's going to be stuck in courts for years, and a lot of people are going to be in trouble. That's a case where there's discrimination that's helpful to women, and I don't think we want to make it the kind of thing that we might lose.
Yeah. Number 1.
I have a worry related to affirmative action, and I guess it's a point of information.
It's coming in the next resolution.
Given that we have just said that you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, or do we have some way of protecting ourselves?
Yes, the next
Okay.
resolution. Mike number 4?
Have we voted on marital status
No.
yet? Well, I would like clarification from the speaker who just talked about the Family Law Reform Act, because I don't understand how the discrimination could come about.
82
the way that
tail.
she said.
I guess I'm told that Mike number 3 has an answer for that.
It's a distinction on the basis of your marital status. And what we're telling the court with a compelling reason is you cannot make distinctions on the basis of certain things like sex. You can't treat men and women differently in the law. But as you pointed out, you can treat married people different than single people. That's what the Family Law Reform Act does. And that's why it's so important that marital status not be in the same category as sex.
Many recommendations on this subject, but there's one that's typed up that's really clear, so perhaps we could use that one as a basis for discussion. Okay, it was submitted by Margaret Byrne and Sheila Murray. Whereas we believe the Constitution to be an institution which expresses the relationship between the state and the people, as well as the relationships between governments, and whereas women and the peoples of Canada have not been sufficiently represented or involved in the current process of constitutional reform or in federal provincial negotiations on that topic, therefore be it resolved that we, women and peoples of Canada, declare our view to the governments of Canada and the provinces that the current process of constitutional reform is inadequate to meet the aspirations and beliefs of Canadians, that the process does not reflect the concerns, commitment, and involvement which we as Canadians believe to be essential to a democratic and non-violent process of constitutional reform, and that therefore the present process should be immediately abandoned. Be it further resolved that governments and the peoples of Canada should immediately begin together the development of a process of constitutional reform which reflects our history, our hopes, and our beliefs as Canadians.
Does anybody want to speak to the motion? Read again?
The whole thing?
83 tail.
Okay. Whereas we believe the Constitution... Well, do you want all the preamble or the recommendations at the end? Okay. Therefore, be it resolved that we, women and peoples of Canada, declare our view to the governments of Canada and the provinces that the current process of constitutional reform is inadequate to meet the aspirations and beliefs of Canadians, that the process does not reflect the concerns, commitment, and involvement which we as Canadians believe to be essential to a democratic and non-violent process of constitutional reform, and that therefore the present process should be immediately abandoned. Be it further resolved that governments and the peoples of Canada should immediately begin together the development of a process of constitutional reform which reflects our history, our hopes, and our beliefs as Canadians.
Mic number 4.
I'd like to speak against the resolution. And I think that's what the wording says, abandon. Doesn't say block. And the intent was to allow we as Canadians some time to develop another process which would be more inclusive and less exclusive of the people of Canada. I would also like, in a point of privilege, to ask if there is another resolution related to process.
Is there?
Yes, there is one.
Process and patriation.
I can perhaps at random read you another one because there are quite a few.
Are there?
But I just found one, so I can read it to you.
Wait a minute, before you read it, I did submit one, and it's a very clear position.
What color paper is it on?
Green, green.
That's the one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Does everyone agree that I should just read another, for example? I just happened to pull this one out.
Well, read the green one and we'll see what we're talking about. Because that's
Okay, well, I've got a green one in my hand.
it's a small one.
Madam Chairperson, just again on a point of privilege, I was the seconder of the motion that you just read, and what I would like to know is if another motion that came out of the meeting today is going to be put forward.
84
a
tail.
more strongly worded motion, a more specific motion that refers to patriation with an amending formula.
Okay, another example of the kind of recommendation that was made. Be it resolved that this conference condemns the process by which the Charter of Rights has been drafted and deplore the lack of consultation with the Canadian people. We further demand that there be a moratorium on constitutional reform and that the BNA Act be patriated with an amending formula but without a Charter of Rights. We further demand that a constituent assembly representing the people of Canada and their interests be elected to discuss the question of entrenchment and draft an acceptable Charter of Rights. Okay, so that's another example of the kind of resolution or recommendation on process that we received.
Here, I've got a copy of this one that you lost.
I'm told that we can... You want to read it? I'm sure I can read it.
Okay.
Okay, this is another one. The Women's Constitutional Conference proposed that the government withdraw its resolution and that appropriate steps be taken to adopt a Made in Canada Constitution. That the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as presently formulated be redrafted to conform with the International Bill of Human Rights, including specific questions having to do with Canadian reality, such as the national rights of the French-Canadian people, the rights of the Native peoples, the rights of the various ethnic communities, the rights of women, children, and labor. That the Canadian government advise the British government that the BNA Act be rescinded.
Right. Now I'd like to speak to that.
Just a minute. Mic number 1.
Point of order. Earlier tonight, we had a question or a resolution put to the floor, which was tabled. I would like to move. It seems to me that we're debating this issue on two fronts, on the Charter of Rights front and on the patriation front. The question, or the resolution, I should say, put to the floor earlier stated that the
85.
forum could agree in, or could vote on
85 tail.
could somebody read it? That we approve in principle a Charter of Rights. I'd like to move that we reintroduce that motion, approve or disapprove and vote on it, vote on the Charter of Rights, and after that go to the question of patriation.
We meant to go.
Mic number 4.
Madam Chairperson,
Picture all
I'm
24.
so accustomed to us doing this to ourselves, women, you know. We go on till 2 o'clock in the morning battering ourselves to death. But it's not unproductive. We are doing something important. In the resolution that we have just set aside, there was mention of our history and our aspirations as a people. What do we know about our history? Our history as a doubly colonized people. When you think of 1759 and what went before it, when you think of Wolfe coming down through Acadia and burning the farms and destroying the people, when you think of Quebec under Lord Durham's report, when you think of 1837 and our failed bourgeois revolution, when you think of the fact that for a century we had no rights and we were afraid even to speak about rights, when you think of the Depression, when you think of the War Measures Act, and now, for the first time in our history, we have a possibility of having a constitution in this country that says people have rights, and not only people have rights, but women have rights. And we're going to say we don't want that because it's not good enough. For Christ's sake, for women's sake, the process is bad. We have bad government. We have unrepresentative government. We have bourgeois government. Let's recognize the fact. But we have, for the first time in our history, the opportunity to speak as feminists, to speak as people who understand what rights are. And let's not kid ourselves. We are not the majority, but we are a powerful voice. We are lucky to be here with our powerful voices and our plane tickets in our hand. Let us, for God's sake, adopt this principle of a Charter of Rights in our Constitution and then get on making those rights a reality. Thank you.
Okay, I've been told that the translators are going to stay until 10:30. Aren't they beautiful? Mic number 1.
Madam Chairperson, someone before me at this mic challenged those who were not in favor of the present entrenched rights being passed. That were
88.
proposed. And I would
Dale.
like to just very simply say, not with the rhetoric that has just gone before us, perhaps I haven't got that kind of talent. My adrenaline flows when I think that perhaps we ought to take a look at one thing.
Number 2.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Margaret Fern, Saskatchewan. For an old civil rights worker like myself, it is very odd to sometimes appear to be opposed to civil rights, and I certainly am not. if we could have a Charter of Rights with all the amendments that we have so carefully addressed this evening, I would be very much in favour of it. But let me take you back to the real world. And to refer to what one of the previous speakers was saying to us, I think what we may well end up with in the real world, that is in the Parliament of Canada at the moment, is a Charter of Rights that is a bourgeois Charter of Rights, to use the previous language, and I am opposed to that. And I think that I would like to not have this debate get into a demoralizing state with people against people, thinking that people are against rights. That is not what the debate should be about. The debate should be about what is before the Parliament of Canada right now, what the implications of that are, and whether we in fact support that Charter of Rights, not whether we support the principle of a Charter of Rights, which I think most of us actually do.
Okay, well, it has been decided by the audience that we, by the participants, that we should discuss the principle at this time. Mic number 3.
To discuss a principle, just in principle, is not enough. To talk about the entrenchment of the Charter of Rights, if such a motion is passed tonight, it will be taken by the
89
Honourable
tail.
Government to indicate that the women...
As a woman, for an in favor of an entrenched Bill of Rights, is because I see it as the only, really the only way to give a direction to the courts. Because it is not true to say that in my view, it is not true to say that we are going from legislative supremacy to judicial supremacy. That is simply not the case. The courts in this country have been interpreting our rights for years. They have been interpreting them in the common law tradition, or in the case of Quebec, in the civil law tradition. And they are not suddenly being given some power that they have not, in fact, already had. They have had it, and they have exercised it, I agree, prejudicially, often, to us. Not always. In some cases of civil liberties, and I'm thinking back of the famous cases of the 50s, in the Jehovah's Witness cases, the Roncarelli case, the Padlock Law case, in some of the most important cases in Canadian constitutional history, the courts have, despite the process by which they're appointed, shown themselves to be on the side of civil liberty. They have not, however, and in this they're very like the American courts, who have also shown themselves to be on the side of civil liberty and who have also been increasingly good on race questions, but like the American courts, have not been very good on the issue of women's human right to equality. And indeed, that's why in the United States they've been trying since 1924 to get an amendment to their Bill of Rights. The courts already interpret our rights to equality and have interpreted it unfavorably. If we don't get a Charter of Human Rights which will explicitly state in so many words, very clear words, that what we want is not simply equality in the administration of the law, which is what they have been giving us in the common law tradition, or the civil law tradition, but that what we want is equality in the very substance of the law itself. We have to, it seems to me, give that clear signal, that clear direction, that clear message. And the only way, in my view, it wouldn't, in my view, even be good enough to say that the Diefenbaker Bill of Rights it takes priority over the legislation. For one thing, it's got the same wording as the common law, and really wouldn't be very helpful to us. And so, as far as the judiciary goes, as I say, on some civil liberty questions, in the 50s and 60s, they have been very good. They have not yet, either in Canada or the United States, been very good on the equality of women. The issue of the composition of the judiciary, I agree with Lynn, is extremely important. I wish it were being addressed in this particular package, but it's not. It will be being addressed, as will the composition of the Senate, and other important matters to us as women, and to ensure better representation of women in the federal and juridical institutions of this country, will be being addressed in subsequent federal provincial conferences. That is undoubtedly the case. But for the moment, we are asking ourselves whether or not we want to give this clear signal to the courts, courts which have already address themselves to our issues. At the same time, we are also giving, by having a Charter of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms, and particularly with the affirmative action section, a clear message to the legislatures as well, all of the legislatures in Canada. And that's why I dearly hope this motion will be passed.
Mike number 2.
Ann Bolton, Saskatchewan. To entrench or not to entrench? Well, according to the clock on the wall, it's 10:30 Pierre Trudeau time. Because there is no doubt that what we are deciding here
90,
is
Dale.
on Pierre Trudeau's personal agenda.
Everybody in favor? Opposed? Oh. Takes care of the process? Does it take care of the process, or is there further resolution? Okay, great. So we'll wrap it up. And just a minute. I think that there's one thing about us women. We have labor pain, but we eventually deliver. And we have a special thank for the translators.
Mic 3 for a moment, please. An announcement at mic 3. Being passed around on the far side there. An added little thank you for the interpreters for their abiding by us with through second thin. Anybody has nickels, dimes, shekels, dig deep, please.
I'd like to also suggest that we've had some incredible leadership here today.
91, Tail.
Incredible round of applause.